miles from Africa, Dutch scientists at the University of Nijmegen, following a scientific tradition dating back to Newton and his apple, have stumbled accidentally on a breakthrough in the fight against malaria while investigating the behavior of the African mosquito. The discovery came during preliminary research with volunteers who spent 2 weeks living with the blood-sucking insects for 4 hours a day. The experiments were trying to determine which part of the body mosquitoes prefer to feed on.
Are they biting you, Ben? Yeah. Where? Oh wait, it's biting there on your right ankle. With the experiments of the landing points of the mosquitoes, we found that this African malaria mosquito tends to bite specifically around the feet.
Armed with the new information about the mosquitoes' feeding habits, the scientists analysed the foot odour from the smelliest feet of their team. The big breakthrough, however, came not from a study of the sweat molecules, but in typical Newtonian fashion from a trip to the pub.
While we were having a beer one day, we all started throwing some ideas around until somebody said, but listen, there are some cheeses that smell exactly like feet. In fact, here in the Netherlands we have an expression that some people have cheesy feet, which is not a very favorable expression, but we use it sometimes. Then some of us went together to a cheese shop and we literally smelled a whole range of cheeses until we found this one particular Limburger cheese, of which we all said, yes, this must be it.
The scientists stocked up on their foot-smelling cheese and discovered that the fatty acids and bacteria found in Limburger cheese and in between the toes of human feet produce exactly the same odour.
Today we know precisely the chemical nature of the cheese odours, and the chemical nature of food odours has been known for a long time, and if we compare the two, it's remarkable how comparable they are.
As news of the discovery has spread, fellow scientists and their families have already started taking cheeses on vacation as makeshift mosquito snares. And the Dutch researchers themselves are moving their experiments to Africa with the aim of producing the world's first cheese-baited mosquito trap. Until then, when on holiday, remember to wash your feet. After the break, we investigate the ultimate fairy tale.
I really, really believe that was the fairy.
Up to 100 years ago, the existence of fairies was still widely accepted in the rural areas of Britain and Ireland. It was only in the 20th century that they were dismissed as folklore. But over the past 2 decades, sightings of these mythical Tinkerbells and fantasy pucks has been much more common. 40 and TV went on a trip to Never Never Land to find out if fairies are fact or fiction. When Peter Pan introduced Wendy to Tinkerbell, he was following a tradition dating back to pre-Christian times, when ancient cultures believed fairies were lost spirits who came to their aid in times of need. Though historically regarded as tiny creatures with wings, the fairy family includes the naughtier elves and goblins. Today, 80 years after Sir James Barrie wrote about Peter Pan, fairies are in danger of being forgotten. But there is one place to go if you still believe: Britain's only fairy shop.
Children today are bombarded with images of war and death and destruction and famine, and I think that fairies, or love of fairies, offer people a different way of being, a gentle way of being.
Merron's shop is a refuge for believers in these mythical creatures.
I never expected I would get people coming from all over the country telling me their first-hand stories of fairies. And when somebody tells you the absolute truth, from their heart. I think you know when you're listening to it, and I've never felt that I was being spun a story ever.
It was the time when me and my partner make our vows to each other. We do it once a year at a very special place to us. It's a very dark area, and we went down there to a place near some water, and I felt a presence of something. It felt really lovely. And then I saw like a yellowish white light, a ball of light. But there was nothing there, there was no insects there, there was nothing there that could have explained that light. And it was moving as well. It was like fluttering, like wings on the outside of it. It was very beautiful, and I really, really believe that was the fairy, and it was blessing our union together. And I was really, really moved by it.
Famous photographic evidence came in 1920 with the Cottingley fairies. They convinced Arthur Conan Doyle, but were revealed in the 80s as a hoax by psychic researcher Joe Cooper. However, Joe still believes that fairies do exist.
A June-born young lady named Mary disbelieved in the species called fairy. So one midsummer day, they took her away and returned her at dusk, much more wary. Whether data is sound depends on the people who are giving you the data. A 9-year-old little girl's talking about fairies. They don't lie, I don't think. Neither do older women looking back on their childhood. I've got about 30 interviews on tape, and they're very long. From a bloke who was in Gibraltar and a gnome ran out of the bushes and snatched a sandwich out of his hand. On another occasion, a guardian angel of a tree turned out to be 60 foot high and looked like Noddy with a bobbly hat. But most common cases involve small fairies. Often these are in settings when people are a bit worried or something like that. But there's not a lot you can do about it. And fairies have the power to appear and disappear when they wish to, not when you want them to come.
But not only are there people who believe they've seen fairies, there are some who claim to be able to summon fairies at will.
A friend of mine saw some and said they really existed, and I said, if that's true, I want to go see fairies. So it brought me to England, and I spent a lot of time trying to find them and scared to death in case I would find one. And after 5 or 6 years of earnestly looking and trying to find the fairies and coming up with nothing, I was sitting like this and I was just thinking, I wish I could see a fairy, I wish I could see a fairy, I wish I could see a fairy. And in my mind, I saw very vividly, as if you'd have like an explosion, I saw a fairy, and well, he's about 12 inches high. I'd call him more of an elf. He was sitting exactly with his legs crossed and his hand like this, and he was staring right at me, and he was just completely mocking me like this. And the moment I saw him, I was so shocked, and I thought, I just saw a fairy, and then I realized that you have to take the whole thing lightly. I'd been so serious, so focused on trying to see it in the physical world, there's no way.
After her first contact, Maria can communicate with fairies whenever she wants.
When I say I can call the elves and the fairies to me, part of me is saying, oh, I'm just playing with my imagination. Who knows how real it is? But when the next day miracles happen and things shift left and right and you don't have to do anything, you don't have to struggle and work so hard, you start to think there are helpers out there. I wish to open a ritual space, and I call upon you, rock.
For the first time ever, Maria allowed television cameras to record her daily communion with the woodland spirits.
To open this ritual space. Lots of elves over here to the left, and they're playing with us, absolutely, with sound and explosions. We'd like to talk to the ones that are present and ask them what they'd like to say to television. They don't understand what television is. What advice would you like to give to the audience on how they can play with you more or be more in touch with you? They're saying most people put playtime just to weekends, and they don't think of bringing playtime into their work. That if they thought of their work as a place they go to play, and they invited the fairies in the morning, the fairies could spark their imagination all day long of fun, playful ways to do the work that they're doing.
Some say fairies are all in the mind, but always remember the words of Peter Pan. that's it for tonight's Fortean TV. Join us next week when we'll continue to skate on that thin crust known as reality. We'll find out why the Egyptian art of mummification is making a comeback and meet a man making millions from a miracle rock. In the meantime, I'll leave you with a little song I've written about the fairies. It's called The Fairy Song, and I'll be accompanied by my good friend Peg. Fairies and elves and water sprites, with those who dwell in flowers and trees, can't be explained away by science. They still appear just when they please. Brownies and gnomes and pixies too will dance around the fairy ring, and those with faith can sometimes see them